Hello, Rupert. I would like to have a better understanding of aversion and attraction and consciousness. In the meditation, could it be that the separate self, generally in life, stores traumas and residues of emotions into the body, and that these are felt as dense spots or even painful places in the body? And could it be that observing or residing these painful spots or dense spots in the body dissolve by just abiding them in consciousness? And is the bad habits or the conditionings that created these densities or painful elements or residues in the body they also dissolved when they are abided in being aware of being aware in the meditation, and we are aware, for example, of a painful spot in the body, and we are being aware of being aware, and this painful spot is there, and we let it just be. Is it like a cleaning? Is it like automatically being cleaned out of the body and dissolved? And with that, the negative conditioning is also being cleaned out. And is that part of what we are doing here?
Okay, so the answer to all 6 questions is yes.
Perfect. So I guess because you mentioned also like being aware of being aware and letting the attention or the focus dissolve or relax into that. But you also suggest other meditations where we are more observing the densities and the painful elements in the body. And you say the first step of this teaching is to understand the essence of our nature. So I'm kind of confused in whether, in conventional speaking, I'm not talking about the tropical enlightenment terms, but that's what we would call it, truly understand the essence of our nature. Is that the first necessity to progress on this path, and from there start, because the underlying separate self is gone, there's no more foundation for these bad habits to hold on to or to stand on to, and they automatically, being established in our true nature, they fall away. But you suggest several meditations. So I'd like to clear up, is the first step, I don't know how to call it, enlightenment is too exotic, but seeing our true nature clearly, is that like real clearly, like you say, be enlightened by it? Is that the necessary first step?
Okay. So, yes, your observations are generally correct, but let me elaborate. That there are basically 2 paths that we engage in here. One of them I refer to as the inward-facing path, and one of them is the outward-facing path. So the inward-facing path is, for instance, what we did this morning, where we go inwards, not inwards into the body, but inwards into towards the very core of ourselves, the fact of being aware, or awareness itself. And this involves a turning away from the content of our experience. It doesn't matter what our thoughts, feelings, activities, relationships. We're going to the one, the self, that lives at the heart of them. This is the inward-facing or the selfward-facing path. And this path culminates in not just the recognition, I am awareness, although that is a step on the way. It culminates in the recognition of the nature of the awareness that I am. So most people think they are a mixture of thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions. We trace our way back. We recognize I am awareness. And then we explore the nature of awareness, and we recognize its inherently peaceful, fulfilled nature. And that is what is, that recognition, the recognition of the nature of ourself, is what is traditionally called enlightenment or awakening. So that is the culmination of the inward-facing path, what Ramana Maharshi referred to yesterday as going all the way, making this discrimination between awareness and its objects and going all the way back to awareness and recognizing its nature. Then, what I call the outward-facing path is when we turn round again, so to speak, and we begin to explore the way we feel the body and perceive the world in a way that is consistent with this new understanding of ourself. So, for instance, the body, which, as you rightly say, is often a dense network of tensions. And those tensions are not just functional tensions. They don't just come from the fact that we're sitting upright on a chair or holding a mic. They are tensions that come from residual layers of feeling that have not been fully processed early on in our life and are laid down as layers of tension or contraction in the body. So now we have a situation where we understand fully that I am this inherently peaceful, unconditionally fulfilled presence of awareness. But there are still some pockets in the body, some densities and some tensions that betray my old feeling of myself. In other words, there is a discrepancy between my new and genuine understanding of myself and the way I feel the body. The way we feel the body, and indeed the way we perceive the world, has not yet caught up with our understanding. So the outward-facing path, what I sometimes call yoga meditations, are the meditations that we do that are not about investigating our true nature. We have already investigated our true nature. They are about realigning the way we feel the body and perceive the world in a way that is consistent with our enlightened understanding.
Yes, thank you. But could we then say that everybody who had understood the fact that they are, in essence, awareness, can we all say of these people here in the room that they are enlightened? Could you please clear up the term enlightenment?
I actually never use the word enlightenment unless I'm explaining the traditional use of the word, because I think it's a misleading word suggesting that our self becomes enlightened. In other words, suggesting that something extraordinary happens to our self. What is traditionally called enlightenment is simply the recognition of the nature of our self. It is not any kind of development of ourself or progression of ourself. We cannot become enlightened. It is just the recognition of the nature of the one we call I, myself.
Could we then say that you are more enlightened than us?
No. The self, the only self there is, the self that shines in each of us as the knowledge I or I am, is in exactly the same condition in all people.
But your understanding is different than ours. Otherwise, we would not sit here to listen to your teachings.
But myself is the same as yourself. When I look at you all, I don't see any unenlightened selves. I think of you all as enlightened selves. That is, I think of you all as this pure, inherently peaceful being. I think of everyone like that. So it's true, I am sometimes presented with ideas or behaviors that contradict that, or that don't express that understanding. But even so, I still feel that the being behind those thoughts or behaviors is the same. It's not an enlightened self, it is simply the light of the self.
Yes, we are in understanding that we are the presence of awareness. We continue the meditations, the outward-facing path. And then we encounter that for example, a painful, dense spot in the body. And we experience immediately aversion. Either a pleasant experience comes up.
So the first thing to do would be, instead of feeling aversion towards it, the first step would be to welcome it. And in fact, if you don't even need to make welcoming or allowing a practice, because it is the nature of awareness. The space of this room doesn't practice allowing or welcoming as each of us enters the room. Its nature is allowing. So all that is necessary to do in the face of such a tension in the body is to be knowingly this open, empty presence of awareness. And from that perspective, you allow this knot of tension in your chest. So that's or your chest or your belly or your throat or wherever it is. That's the first step, is to turn and face it rather than to push it away. The next step would be then to actually bring it closer, or to encourage it to soften and expand into the space of awareness. And we'll go there in the week. You might breathe emptiness into it in order to encourage it to return to awareness or dissolve in awareness.
If you would break your leg, like you come from the stairs and you break your leg, you will experience pain.
Yes.
You will not make the secondary pain by making a story about it and saying, oh, I'm hurt and this hurts a lot, and okay, you don't extrapolate or you don't worsen it by making a story about it. But
I would call the doctor.
Of course.
And I would do whatever was necessary to take care of my leg.
Of course, but would you be suffering?
I'd be in pain, but emotional suffering and pain are two different things. You can be in intense physical pain and not be suffering emotionally, and you can be extremely comfortable physically and be suffering.
So you mean that people with like physical pain, you can still understanding the essence of your awareness, the essence of your nature, being established in that you would not, your peace or it would not be disturbed by the physical pain you experience?
I know many people who are sick and in pain and are radiantly happy or just quietly peaceful. And I also know people who are healthy and experience no pain and are wealthy and lead comfortable lives and are miserable.
So physical pain is not a recipe for misery. If you understand.
No, but having said that, it's natural to resist physical pain. We should resist physical pain. Physical pain is supposed to be resisted. So I'm not suggesting that there is no resistance to physical pain. There is resistance to physical pain. If I feel physical pain, I attend to it. So, and that is, you could say that was resistance. I try to make it better. But that's different from emotional suffering.
Yes, I think that's very interesting, because if we're talking about suffering, and this is the whole essence of what we're trying to solve here is we want to make an end of the suffering, and then you're in the light of your being, you understand what you are, and then you fall from the stairs, you break a leg, and then there you go. I was wondering, okay, maybe I need to go there first to really understand. But if people like you would be have another kind of suffering, because there is pain, and pain can be so intense. I'm just talking about physical pain here.
No,
not
if I was in intense physical pain, I would resist it.
Yeah. So you'd be suffering in a way?
Well, it's it's not emotional suffering. It's resistance, but it's not emotional suffering. I make a very clear distinction between physical pain and the resistance to physical pain and emotional suffering.
Okay.
Would you rather be in pain and happy, or without pain and miserable?
Oh, definitely the first.
Of course. Yeah. Of
But
course.
for me, at this stage in my life, physical pain is also suffering, I would say.
No, I think you're mixing up physical resistance and emotional suffering. Try to make a clear distinction between them. It's natural to resist physical pain. The emotional suffering is suffering that is based on the sense of being a separate self. Your resistance to physical pain does not come from the sense of being a separate self. It comes from a physical pain. So emotional suffering is just that suffering that is generated by the sense of being a temporary finite self.
Yes. And the essence of the avoidance would be the separate self for the part of
It's not the separate self that avoids the physical pain. It is the avoidance of physical pain is an intelligent response. That is an expression of intelligence. It is the avoidance that takes place in emotional suffering is the avoidance of a separate self.
Yes, okay. So when you meditate and you feel a density or a pain in the body, and with that you feel the avoidance, that would be the separate self trying to avoid.
No, it's fine to avoid physical pain. I recommend you do try to avoid physical pain.
Underlying there could be an emotion.
Well, so then you have to distinguish between the two.
Isn't that very hard? Like when you have a cramp
If you can't, most of the time it's easy. Don't worry about the few times when you can't distinguish between them, but most of the time it will be clear in your life what resistance comes from the natural resistance to physical pain and what resistance comes from the feeling of being a temporary finite self. Occasionally it may be unclear, but most of the time it's clear.
Clear in the sense, could you specify a little bit more? Like, how could you?
Well, if you've fallen down the stairs and broken your leg, you are in pain, and there is resistance to that pain, which is an intelligent response of the body saying, "Please take care of me." If you are jealous, you are not experiencing physical pain; you are experiencing emotional suffering, and that emotional suffering comes from a mistaken view of yourself. You think, I am a temporary finite self. And your jealousy is arising on behalf of that temporary finite self. It's not arising on behalf of your self-awareness.
Yeah, that's a very clear example. But when you have like, you close your eyes and immediately you feel the dense spot in the body, and it's hurtful, it's painful. You feel the aversion with that pain. I'm talking about this kind of pains in the body. When you close your eyes to meditate, you don't know, okay, is there an underlying current of emotion here or not?
Check out that the pain in your body is not an abscess or a growth or something like that. If as long as you're sure that it's none of those, the chances are it is the manifestation in your body of one of these old residues of emotional trauma from early in your life, in which case it's not physical pain, it's a manifestation, it's a contraction in your body that comes from emotional suffering. And in this case, that should not be resisted, it should be welcomed.
Okay, that's more clear. Thank you very much.
Okay.